Hi guys, and welcome to this Indiegogo campaign video for my documentary They Call Us Channelers. My name's Kevin Moore, and since October 2008, whilst at university, I started hosting the chat show called The Moore Show on YouTube. I've been interviewing people from across the world on the subjects of consciousness, the paranormal and spirituality. Now, covering these subjects and interviewing so many researchers in these fields has shifted my understanding and truth. But the biggest change I went through was in January 2015 when I started to channel. Now, channeling to me is just a form of energy exchange. It's an ability to bring in teaching information into this present moment right now, enabling us all to bring more understanding and peace to our lives. So in this documentary, I'll be traveling across the world meeting channelers from the UK, America, parts of Europe, Dubai, Australia and Asia. Now, my intentions for this documentary is to showcase that we all have this ability to tap into our more natural state of who we already are, just as writers, artists, poets and scientists naturally do all the time, and expanding the word channeling, and also not forgetting just how important the human experience is as well. Now, I plan to dive really deep with the channelers, to ask the channelers the questions they've never been asked before, to show people that there potentially is a reality that's never been brought through before, and by asking these deep questions, it will only bring us back more into the present moment. So we've already gone into production for the documentary, as we've had a few private donors go beyond the call of duty, which has enabled me to buy the camera equipment and film channelers across some parts of the UK and Europe. Now, we're looking to raise $15,000, as this will pay for the international travel costs, post-production, distribution and also promoting the film at film festivals next year. So I really need your help, guys, in making this a reality. Now, your energy exchange will mean so much. Remember, we're all in this together. This is oneness at its best, as this will really help people expand their reality even further and help people make sense of why things are the way they are. So if you feel drawn to help out, then in the description of this video you'll see the links to our Indiegogo campaign, and no matter what you can donate, all donations receive a digital copy of the documentary before the general public when it's released next year, and also a thanks in the credits for the video. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and the transparency that I'm showing in this video, just thank you so much. This has been a year's worth of my journey to get to this point now, and it was September 2016 when the idea for the documentary came to me. And your donation, your help, just even sharing this video means so much to me. So much love, thank you for watching, and we'll catch up with you on an update soon.
Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 26th of August 2017 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show, and I thank Kevin for his work, hard work in terms of broadcasting the Satsanga on his YouTube channel and continuing to spread the word and doing his own work for helping to increase the frequencies of the earth and the spiritual population. So let's have a look at the agenda for this particular Satsanga, and the first part is to look at what a creator is and what their role and responsibilities are. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail on this because there's a whole book being written on it, and although I've broken the 90,000 word barrier, I feel I've still got another year's work to go before I can submit it for publication. So this will just be an overview. Then we've got a whole group of questions from some of my listeners, and I thank them very much for their questions. They're always deep searching, and they're always challenging, and they're always useful to us all, myself included, so I thank for those questions. And then we're going to have an end of meet meditation, which is a meditation to connect with others. So what is a curator? Well, a curator is one of a group of beings who were created at the same time as ourselves. We're all created together by our Creator, our Source, our God, with a view to working with this multiversal environment that it created within itself. And at the point in time of our creation, there was a choice to be made. Do we want to go into the evolutionary cycle, which is where most of us, well, where all of us are right now, as incarnate beings, or do we, for want of a better word, enter into the service side of things? And the service side of things could be to look after the structure of the multiverse, or it could be to help those spirits or souls or true energetic souls, aspects of true energetic souls or shards, etc., to work with their life plan and be part of the evolutionary cycle, and from our perspective go into incarnation to accelerate our evolutionary progression. But the curators are those beings who chose to be in service, and what they are is they're a whole group of various different entities, and I can't remember how many there are, but there's certainly over 35 different genres of curator in terms of what they do to maintain the evolutionary structure of the multiverse. Now, we evolve through this multiversal structure in terms of as we increase our frequencies, our true energetic self has the ability to move through different levels of frequency. And the more evolution we accrue, the higher up the frequencies we can get. And once we achieve the top frequency within the multiversal environment, which is the 397th simultaneous universe, not parallel. Parallel is created through event space and the possibilities of taking choice. Once we've done that, we've finished the evolutionary cycle, and we wait until everybody else, all the other true energetic souls, finish the evolutionary cycle, and then we go through this change of location, where the source starts to depopulate the energy that it's currently occupying with its sentience, which includes us, because we will be back in communion with the source, and it repopulates its sentience in another part of the origin, and then it creates another environment, and maybe we get used again to understand what the functions and what can be achieved, those particular energies that become part of its environment. But in this particular evolutionary cycle, we have the multiverse, and we have those entities that maintain it for us, and they work in all sorts of areas. I mean, right now, the book called The Curators is still dealing with entities that are in the higher levels of structure. And there's those entities that look after the structure within the structure. There's entities that look after the links between structure. There's those entities that look after the evolutionary opportunities, the introduction of new environments, changing of new environments, the manipulation of event space, this energy, this intelligent energy which pervades not only the source but the origin, and everything's part of the origin. And they can work on various different functions of event space in terms of the larger sort of multiversal size event spaces, right down to micro event spaces, and the event streams that are part of that. And these entities can manipulate event spaces, change event spaces, join them together, take event spaces out of action, put new event spaces in, and all the different things that happen within them as well. And so a curator is not just something that looks after a particular part of multiverse, but it's all the different smaller aspects of the multiverse that they look after. But the overall picture is to maintain this efficiency associated with the accrual of progression, and that progression is measured in terms of evolution and how we are able to experience, learn, and evolve in the process. And so everything to do with our environments, multiversal environments, and the various different functions of it are maintained by these entities. And it's interesting that one of the things I've noticed in communicating with the source on what these entities do is that although I haven't got down to and I won't do for a number of months yet, I haven't got down to those entities that look after the earth right now, because those are what we call elementals, and that's what most people will be sort of wanting to flick through the pages and get to at the end, is to work out what these elementals do within the physical universe, because it will sort of focus on the physical universe towards the end of the book. But the whole point of these things is to maintain a level of order. And one of the things I've noticed is that when we think we have free will, it's only free will to a point. And that was one of the things that really surprised me, is that everything is manipulated around us to ensure that the ability to get the evolutionary acceleration and the maximum evolutionary progression and the efficiency in terms of gaining evolution is created by these beings. They do a lot of things in the background to ensure that what we do in our so-called deaf, dumb and blind state associated with the incarnation isn't always left up to chance. So even though we think we are doing things in a, for want of a better word, self-propelled, self-understood, individualised free will state, we are also guided in a significant way as well. Not only from our guide and helpers, but also from these beings who are changing our environment around us and making sure that there's no continuity errors, there's no things that suddenly stop and start, and so we start to allow us to think about questioning the effectiveness, or should I say, the integrity of our surroundings. And they keep everything everything that they do and all they change is done in a way that we don't notice what's going on. And so even though there's a possibility that we could, for instance, go from one particular event space to another because of the different things that we choose to do, and the generation of event space is based upon choice. When we have the opportunity to go one way versus another, we don't just go one way. We sort of split into two, and one part of us experiences the one direction, and the other part of this experiences the other direction. And so they work on that, and they start to work on the how they can maintain the efficiency of all of these fractalized splittings off of event spaces, and also the different ways in which we can experience the environment as well. For instance, everything to do with the physical universe is created so that we can, for want of a better word, not waste our time. Although there's no such thing as time, but we're doing things in a way which is efficient. And one of the things that I've noticed is that some of the things that we see as being natural progressions in terms of our ingenuity or invention, so to speak, have been given to us because we need to experience something at a certain point in our existence. And so when things happen to us, and it appears to be an almost impossible series of circumstances that have got us to a certain invention, for instance, or a certain thought process, it's because there's been things happening in the background, not specifically from our guides and helpers, but from these entities who are changing the way we work with the environment and changing the environment around us in small ways or larger ways, or ways in which we don't notice there's been a big change, to help us to become more efficient in how we interact with the environment and those other entities who are working with the environment. So the curators are basically God's maintenance entities, if you want to call it that. They're those entities who the Source has allowed to operate on maintaining the structure, the minute detail of the structure, and the major detail of the structure, to allow us to experience those environments that can be created by that structure as well, and experience, learn, and evolve in a most efficient way. Again, it's a very large overview. It wasn't designed to be in detail, because the book goes into more detail. In fact, one of the things that did worry me a little bit up until a few months ago was the amount of detail that I was having to go into for explaining event space. And there's so many different entities that work with it and can change it, that surprised me. that I was becoming a little bit sort of worried that the detail would be a bit too, for want of a better word, boring. But when I look back at it and I see that the detail that's there, I realise that it has to be done that way, so that we could take these, these concepts and ideas slowly and in bite-sized chunks, so that we didn't think we understood it but then not understand it, so to speak. The whole point of some of these works that I'm allowed to do and channel is to feed us the information in a way that we can logically clip together, so to speak. So one piece follows another, and although we might be slightly off centre, so to speak, sometimes in terms of our understanding, the next piece of information sort of brings us back online. So it's important that we recognise that sometimes the information is repeated, albeit sometimes it's given to us in a slightly different way of description, because it's important that we do understand the data and the channeled information in a way that we can understand it ourselves, because each of us has a different way of learning, and the text written down on one page might be understandable to one person, but 1,000 other people might not understand it. So that sometimes it's given to us in an iterative way, so that the information is repeated, but repeated in a different way of describing it. So it helps it to, for want of a better word, be easily digestible, not by one individual, but by a group of individuals who have different ways of understanding, because their learning skills are different. So although I apologise for when you eventually get to get this book about the seemingly repetitive side of the information that's surrounding event space, it is important, because there are lots of beings who look after it and can manipulate it and work it, and that was a new piece of information to me. Okay, well, that's a little bit about the curators. Curators being the maintenance entities of the multiverse, and let's go into the questions now. We've got questions from 1, 2, 3 people. There's depending on the time, I might add a fourth. We've definitely got some left over for next Satsanga in September. So the first one is from US, who is a very wonderful person who does the transcriptions for us. So let's have a look at these questions first. The first question is, I would like you to explain the term holographic. What does that mean to me in the context of event space versus the physical universe versus the multiverse? Please elaborate on these 4 types of holographic things. Well, before I sort of look at that, basically the physical universe and the multiverse are one and the same thing, because the physical universe is part of the multiverse. It's part of the lower frequency function of it. And event space pervades the multiverse. In fact, it pervades everything. It pervades us. It pervades the multiverse itself. It pervades the frequencies within the multiverse. It pervades the source, and it pervades every part of the origin as well. So it's everywhere. So it really means that these things are one and the same thing. It's just they're different functions of the same, let's call it, space. Okay. So holographic is a metaphoric statement for all encompassing and holistic. But let's look at the 4 parts of this question. I said that, and they're saying, you said that event space is a spherical and holographic energetic functionality, which is part of the origin. It is a function similar to the holodeck on Star Trek, programmed by the individual, manifested by a computer. Basically we have to use sometimes baby language to explain these things. Event space itself is a better way of saying is all pervading. I mean, holographic is a way of saying it's 3-dimensional. But 3-dimensional, we know, is just to describe something that we can see as solid, as having height, width, and depth. It's not a function of the structure of what we are, because that's frequential right now. But I mean, real dimensions are much higher pieces of structure than frequencies. And so when we use the term 3-dimensional to explain something, it's just to describe solidity, so to speak. Holographicness, if you want to call it that, is a way of saying that everything is within everything. So if wherever we are, we are still within the same thing. So even if we have this idea of the rubber band ball theory, which describes event space, where the ball is event space in total, and it being like a three-dimensional ball, a solid ball, it gives it this solidity, this occupation of space. But each event, if you think about each event being a rubber band within the rubber band ball, and that each rubber band is in direct contact with each other rubber band, either directly or indirectly through other rubber bands, then you find out that everything is in contact with everything else within the same space. So it's to do with, it's basically a way of saying that it's not really quite a function similar to the holodeck on Star Trek as an example. It's a use of space for everything. It's something that is everywhere but in the same space. It's very difficult to explain. I think the rubber band ball is the best way to explain it, and holographic is just a way of saying it is everywhere. It pervades everything. The next part of it is, I said the fundamental particle of matter is the anu, correct, which link end to end to form strings of rope-like structures that create the holographic framework of the physical universe, which is a hard structure, as opposed to the energetic structure of the multiverse. That's in brackets, by the way. Now, the hard structure is a function of low frequency, and it's the low frequency that creates the ability for certain energies to stick together. And the very lowest function of this is this particle called the anu. I mean, Lesant and Ledbetter were able to, through their own meditation techniques, perceive these things. And my late father-in-law actually managed to capture these on his own form of Kirlian photography by using a homeopathic solution and a special way that he was able to capture these things through his own inventions and his own modifications to Kirlian photography. That description is sort of described in his book Cosmos, by the way, which is also available via Ozark Mountain Publishing. I might put I think I've still got a summary associated with each of the four parts of Cosmos, the four major parts of Cosmos, as an article, and I might put that on the website for people to download, because it's very interesting, and it gives the person an executive summary of the major parts of that book, Cosmos, because Cosmos is quite a large book, and it's one of these things we need to sort of sit down over a long period of time to digest. But the thing about the frequencies being so low, allowing energy to stick together to create a hard structure, and the first part of that, called the anu, is it then allows various different larger structures later, which creates the atom, for instance. And then there's 6 levels of quanta below the atom. So, and the anu is the start of that. But this hard structure isn't actually hard as such. It's still energetic. So the multiverse is energetic, and the physical universe within the multiverse is energetic. It's just that its frequency is so low, we create this sticky energy that clumps together to create physicality. And so it's the part of the holographic function, this everything that is also part of the lower frequency function of energy that sticks together to create this hard structure, this resistive structure we call the physical universe. So it's all the same thing still. It's just that the frequential state creates the different feel, and this is why it's important for us to incarnate here, because this is a very difficult place to exist within. And then because it's difficult, and because the low frequencies mean that we start to lose our connectivity with our true energetic selves, we have to experience this place and learn from it means that we evolve really quickly. So this is why we incarnate here. So the holographic part of the multiverse is still a function of pervasion, of being everywhere in the same space, and this includes this hard or solid structure that is as a result of low frequency, that creates the ability for energies to clump together to create the anew, and then later on the atoms and everything else. Next bit is that I said that our universe contains a multiverse contains 397 universes in the same holographic space. The universes are all convoluted and intertwined with each other at all angles. Then in excerpts from the curators I wrote, the multiverse looks like a small structure in a huge bath of interlaced buckyballs. Yeah. Is this the static structure that our source created for our evolution, that we maintain the help of with our creators, or is it part of the origin substructure throughout its body? The way to describe these things changes as we become more and more able to understand higher concepts. So when we go from one concept to another concept, we're able to stretch ourselves and understand more. So then when we get to another concept, we're able to understand that higher concept. But we wouldn't have been able to understand that higher concept had we not understood the first level of concept change. So it's like it changes our paradigm every way we go through it. And sometimes we need to have these things, what's the word for it, explained in different ways. So saying that all the universes are convoluted and intertwined with each other at all angles is the same as the multiverse looks like a small structure in a huge bath of interlaced buckyballs. So it's everything is interlaced as well. Now, if you look at the structure of a buckyball, which is basically a UK football, not everything is equal. The geometry that holds them together, it changes, and it has to change to maintain its ability to have this pentagon shape, so to speak. So everything is interdependent and interlaced with each other, and that allows it to be interconnecting at all levels and all conditions. So although the multiverse is there and is a function of creation of our source entity, it is only an individualization, or should I say a quarantined area, or a separated out area of that area of energy that is the source. But that energy that has this structure is based upon the energy that was given as a function of individuality, which created the source. So if you think about it in terms of the origin creating the source entities by individualizing some of its own sentience and assigning that to various different energies, those energies are a function of its own structure. And so, in essence, although it's individualized origin, sentience and energy, when it was individualized, it became a function of origin, but with a different purpose and a different signature. It became an individualized function. So it became source entity. And there's various the other source entities there as well. But the structure of the source entity is still part of the origin, because the source entities are within the origin. So everything that is individualized as source entity, or as our trinity cells, or as our aspects, or as our shards, for instance, is still a function of origin. And so we are still part of that all-pervading holographic space that is origin, basically, because everything is existing within everything else. Okay, it's very difficult to explain this, but I think pervasive is a really good way of saying that everything is everywhere. It's because everything is in the same space, but it's different levels or different layers of the same space. That means that the same space can be used by a lot of different functions of structure, but it's the interaction of that structure at those different levels that means that different things can exist in different levels within the same space. The other way to think about it is for computer-aided engineering, when there's a design that's created for a motor car, for instance, they layer things. They put the body in white on one layer, they put the chassis on another layer, they put the electrical harness on another layer, they put the trim on another layer, they put the lighting on another layer, they put the engine on another layer, and you can turn off these different layers, so you can isolate only the body in white, or you can isolate only the wiring harness, or you can isolate only the powertrain, the engine. But if you put all the layers together, you get the whole car. So it's little bit like that. It's if you think of it in terms of the holography of things, is being that the whole car in a computer-aided design environment. But then when you turn off different layers, the different frequencies, for instance, or the different subdimensions or the different full dimensions, and you expose only one, then you get one aspect of it, which could be for us the physical universe, or it could be another universe at a different frequency level. And so you start to see that everything is in the same space, but it occupies different aspects of that space. Okay. There's another question here on this. Some Palladian collectives say we are holographic beings, entities, at the true energetic level. They say what happens to one aspect of you happens to all other aspects as well. When you resolve an issue here on Earth, the information is sent holographically back to other versions of you in other star systems, which allows them to heal and grow from your experience. Is this how I see it? Yeah, yes, sort of. Basically, we have to think of us as our true energetic selves, and not the smaller aspect projected into the physical form. So everything that we experience is experienced by our true energetic self, and ultimately, as each of our aspects go back into our true energetic self, they also experience the collective information that's gained, and that information is experienced learning and evolution that's gained by each of the different projected aspects within the stable multiversal environment, but also the different parallel conditions that occur through event space also is understood and learned at the same time. So everything is passed back to the true energetic self, nothing is lost, and even all the fractalized versions are also passed back as well. So we all parts of us experience these things. We may not experience it whilst we are incarnate, but when we go back to the energetic, we definitely experience it, because we will enter some form of communion with our true energetic self as well. So it's a correct statement. And the holographic being bit is basically saying that we are, again, our true energetic selves exists on many levels. We are sentience given a body of energy, or with a body of energy commandeered by ourselves. That body of energy isn't specifically a body, for full stop, it's just something that our sentience uses, some form of structure that our sentience uses to work with the environment that we're in. And so we, within a function of ourselves, are holographic within our true energetic self. So the soul, or the smaller aspect of the true energetic self, is, when in communion with the true energetic self, everywhere at the same time within that space that is. And so we everything else records everything else. And this is where we get this thing about, and this can also be passed on and within the source, and the source also can experience this. And actually, as we are smaller parts of the source, as the source experiences all of these things, then those true energetic selves that haven't experienced what we're experiencing, they would also experience it as well. So, if, for instance, no other aspect within your true energetic self, or no other aspect within any other true energetic self is experiencing what you're experiencing now, then when you've experienced it, or as you're experiencing it, that information gets passed on to your true energetic self and source, and and it's available for the other true energetic selves as well. So everything experiences everything concurrently. So I hope that helps. But it's basically because we're all part of the same thing. In essence, we're all smaller parts of source, but in essence, we're all smaller parts of origin as well. So even if we're a shard, we're a smaller part of our aspect. As an aspect, we're a smaller part of our true energetic self. As As a true energetic self, we're a smaller part of source. As source, we're a smaller part of origin. So therefore, we're all smaller parts of origin. Okay, so everything there is part of everything else, and that's a way of saying holographic. Everything is part of everything else. Everything is in contact with everything else. Everything is perceived or understood or experienced by everything else concurrently, and that's one way of explaining holographic. Right, I hope that answers that question. Next question is, would you define or describe the force of gravity for us? It said, in the History of God, page 224, he said, gravity is a function of universal love. Please elaborate on that love part, since we could use more universal love on Earth right now. Yeah. Gravity is attraction, attractivity. An attractivity is part of community or being in commune with everything else. So there is a natural desire to be together. There's a natural desire to be one. That natural desire to be one is an understanding. It's difficult for us to understand as incarnate human beings, because we only experience love for another individual, but we all want to be part of a group of people, don't we? We all most of us join clubs. Most of us like to be have a group of friends who have like-minded thoughts. Most of us want to be liked by people. So gravity, as such, is a function of wanting to be together, wanting to be in communion with what we truly are, which is part of our true energetic self, which is part of source. So everything else has a desire to be part of itself. Nothing like to be separate. So gravity is attraction. It's attractivity based upon the need to recommune with whom and what we are. So even down to, gravity on planets and gravity between planets, gravity between different star systems and different galaxies, is based upon everything wanting to be together again. So this feeling of being together is what we would call love. Is this wanting to be together, wanting to be all together all of the time and not being separated. And when we, as incarnate beings, experience love, we want to be with our partner all of the time. So we don't want to be separated. We want to be together. And so this is where this gravity is love and love is gravity comes together, because love is attractivity and gravity is a function of attractivity. Love is a function of attractivity and to be back in communion with another or a group of other individuals. Gravity is a physical function of wanting to be in communion, specifically within the more solid structure of the physical universe. So I hope that answers that question. Okay. Okay, another question from a different person now, WP. Thank you for this question. There's two questions here. And the first one is opening the third eye an appropriate goal? And if so, what is achieved by doing so? Does the pineal gland actually change in the process? Are there hazards to so doing? What technique is best to use, and can it be done with the direction of a guru? Or is this a subset of a broader question, e.g., what is the best spiritual path to follow? The third eye is something which opens naturally, usually through personal work and self-development as a result of wanting to be more spiritual. So it's something that we do naturally. There are individuals, and I can as well, open somebody's third eye and activate the pineal gland as a result of it. Because basically opening the third eye does activate the pineal gland. That's the whole point of it. The pineal gland is a physical manifestation of a function of our ability to work with higher frequency energies. So we perceive and we see as well at the same time. So the third eye is an appropriate goal for those who want to be working in a higher state of beingness in a self-realized state of beingness, in a self-aware state of beingness. And it can be achieved by the self, or it can be achieved by a teacher or guru who is able to do so, who's able to open it for you. The teacher or guru will do it if it can see that it will assist the spiritual development of the student, and that's okay. But a good student will experience the opening of the third eye naturally if they are working on themselves in the right and appropriate way anyway. So it's one of these things where you can either work with a guru who will accelerate your self realization or self-awareness by opening it for you, or you can work on yourselves remotely from a guru or a teacher, and it will happen as a function of your progression anyway. So it's either self-generated or done with assistance. And if you're working on yourself spiritually in a selfless, service-based way with love in your heart, then it is definitely an appropriate goal, and something that people should seek, because it does help. It helps us to understand who and what we are and what the reason for our being here is, and it makes us more calmer. That's calm, C-A-L-M-E-R, as against karma, which is K-A-M, okay? C-K-A-R-M-A, okay, karma. It makes us more understanding of each other and able to interact with each other in a more coherent and understanding way. So it's very good, very useful. I think it's a good thing for people who are on that path to have this either work on themselves to get to achieve it, or to work with a good, selfless, service-based guru to help them open their third eye as well. Right, next part of this question: to what extent has religious theology and Christian theology, in brackets, which I view as being quite different from the theology of Jesus, into brackets, in particular helped and hurt our progress on the spiritual path? And to the extent that it has hurt us, is that one of the primary reasons that church membership is in steady decline, at least for the past 25 years now, as people awaken? The old dogma just doesn't resonate anymore. I think really what we're seeing now is that we're seeing that theology in terms of a way to live and be versus a way of controlling people can't work together now, because people who are working on themselves and are progressing are understanding that certain theologies, such as what Jesus was teaching us, how to interact with others in a way which meant that we didn't accrue karma, we stayed pure, and we became christened or purified. Okay, is one way, but the ways in which people were being told how to live through fear is another way. And so when we have individuals who were of a lower level of education and understanding, as was the case in Jesus' time, the whole point, and just after that, and certainly in the medieval times and Middle Ages, some of the uses of religious doctrines were there basically to control the mass population, to try to make them live and work in a pure way, rather than letting them do it themselves. Where Jesus said, I am the way, I am the light. It was basically, I am an example of how you can find the way and how you can find the light. So this is another way of understanding it, because the way he was living and existing and teaching was one of the ways in which we could find, we could become enlightened and self-realized and understand who and what we are while we incarnate. To master incarnation, to be in the physical but not be of the physical. But some of those individuals who were, for want of a better word, trying to teach this, found that by suggesting people could get to this level, but they needed to do certain things in certain ways, got corrupted, because they found that they could have power over others by telling them what to do, with the premise that they would eventually give them the knowledge to help get them self-realised and help them become God-realised, so to speak. And the issue is that some of these people weren't even God-realised themselves, and this is where we start to get the difference between religious dogma as a theology and the Christian theology that was taught by Jesus, which is basically a way to exist here. The problem is that now people are working on themselves and seeing how they can work on themselves and understanding the bigger picture, the greater reality. They are starting to see through the ways in which certain religions, I think all religions to a certain point, have been controlling individuals, but not actually giving them the true tools to get into being God-realised or self-aware. So, as we become higher frequency, we start to see through things. Things become more transparent, and you can't hide stuff. So, lots of atrocities have been found out in various different churches as well. So, when we start to see these things, we start to understand a lot more about how to exist, how to be, and how to work on ourselves, and how to become self-realised. We start to realise that we don't need to go to a church that teaches us and tries to control people and teach us things the wrong way round. We can do it on our own, or we can do it with a good, selfless, service-based teacher, and we don't need to go to a church to do it. And so that's why things have started to decline from a church-going perspective, is because people are starting to understand that there are other ways of doing it which are more successful, and that the teachings of the churches don't really deliver what they say they can deliver. So it's basically a case of as we become more self-realised, we are able to see through the charade of various different teaching practices or theologies and cut down to the basics and basic understanding and work with it ourselves. And as we do that, we do start to write off, so to speak, various different routes as being slow or not capable of giving us the direction or the end goal of what we want to do, which is become self-realised. So that's why there's been a reduction in church going, because people are noticing that that the churches aren't delivering what they say they can deliver, because they can't, because they've forgotten how to do it, basically. And there are faster ways to become self-realised, and there's better ways of doing it, and there's more understanding ways of doing it, which doesn't involve conflict sometimes. Okay, and on top of that, there's also still a general drop in frequency. So those who were sort of inclined to go to church, who were on the sort of first steps of the spiritual ladder, may have dropped in frequency and therefore decided not to attend a church, for instance, or become part of some form of spiritual community. So there's two things there. One is based on an increase in frequency, and one's based on a decrease in frequency. Increasing frequency means people move away from the churches because they're developing themselves through other means or other teachers, and decreasing frequency means that people lose the interest in the teachings that are being taught to them and the functions of the community surrounding the churches and the various different theologies. Okay, thank you for that. The next one is from JM, and there's about 5 questions here, which is hopefully I can do these all together. So first one is, can I discuss what creativity is from a human perspective? The source creates us, our true energetic selves, that is, but what do we do? What can we create? Are we amongst those that have been given the power of creativity? See top line of page 225 of The Origin Speaks. We are ultimately very powerful creators. Anything that we do that is making something or giving the opportunity for something to happen is creativity. So, very, very basically, for instance, painting a painting is creative. Doing a piece of pottery is creative. Working with a class of people and teaching them how to meditate is creative. So anything that is making something from the basic building blocks of anything that's around us, whether it is sentience, whether it is thoughts, whether it is groups of people, whether it is hard physical componentry, and changing it from one thing to another thing, or it's making persons at level of understanding go from one place to another place, is being creative. And we are ultimate creators. We are individualised units of our true energetic selves, which are individualised units of source, which is an individualised unit of the ultimate creator, the origin. So anything that we do that changes things around us is our creativity. Yeah, even cooking food is being creative. Yeah, everything that we do that can change the way we understand things, and change the way we interact with our environment, or change the way we interact with others, is being creative. So it's not just a case of doing something; it's a case of realising that we are creating different ways of understanding, different ways of interacting, and different ways of being as well. And that's all creative. Okay. Next part is to say we create our lives sidesteps the question: is there anything that I, as a non-human being, can create? If so, how does that process work? Is it under my direct control? Like sending light to a person is under my direct control. In what sense are we human beings creators? Or are we not able to create in any real sense? Yeah, I mean, as a smaller function, as a smaller aspect of our true energetic selves, we are ultimate creators still. So even sending light or sending high frequency energy or healing or love to an individual that you feel needs it is being creative. Helping one's partner overcome an illness, for instance, or helping them make the food, for instance, for lunch or dinner or something, is being creative. Right down to working in the garden is being creative. Making a nice flower bed, for instance, that's being creative. So everything we do is definitely creative. And if we have a thought process that means that we want to share various different revelations with others, then that's being creative. If we want to tell or teach others, that's being creative. If we want to be part of the background spiritually, but meditate and send energy to the earth, or visualize energy going to the earth to increase its frequencies, that's being creative. Everything that we do that changes something is ultimately a function of creation. So we have to look at it in that way. Everything that we do that changes anything around us from one state to another state is a function of our creativity. And that's another way to think about it. Okay. Next question is: Source Entity 3 says that he's just started to work on what he wants to do. This raises a lot of questions. Are all source entities outside of 12 more or less in the same position in their existence? Is there a start? Is there an end? If so, what does it look like? Will source entities ever retire as humans do, or does that concept not apply? If life goes on without end, what is the development of line for source entities? Endless activity, activity with an end, periods of activity, punctuated by periods of inactivity. And there was a beginning to the origin. Is there anything like an end? Well, there's lots of questions there. First one. My understanding about the progression of all the source entities is that in general, they all have to go through an evolutionary cycle as we do with our source entity. The number of evolutionary cycles that we've all got to do to map out this area of polyomniscient volume of the origin sentient self-awareness, or that bit that is trying to make sentient, is vast and infinite. But how many our source entity does compared to the other source entities is immaterial, because collectively we have to map it. It has to be all done. The evolutionary cycle is the working with a particular series of energies and frequencies within a certain part of this volume of the origin. So, in essence, it's sort of immaterial as a question, although because each of the source entities does their things in their different ways, in their different speeds, and their different levels of depth and detail, so to speak. But in terms of where we all are now, we are generally, I'm being told, within an evolutionary cycle of each other, if that makes any sense. So things will, the faster so I shall start again. The more evolutionary cycles we go through, the faster we go through the next evolutionary cycle. So as we go through an evolutionary cycle, then the next evolutionary cycle we go through, it goes faster. Then the next one goes even faster. The next one goes even faster because we apply our learning, us our true energetic selves and source applies the learning from the one evolutionary cycle to the next one. And so we'll eventually get to the point where evolutionary cycles will be over in the blink of an eye, so to speak. And relatively speaking, in comparison, from the source's perspective, they're over pretty quick anyway. But it's just that because we're part of it and we're experiencing it, see it as being a long time. But in essence, it's happening quite quickly. And so we are going through this period of evolutionary cycle where they are happening at not at the fastest rate, but it's not at the slowest rate. And some of the sources have gone through one more than us, and some of them have gone through one less than us, for instance. But right now we are in the third evolutionary cycle. So some are at some are at their second evolutionary cycle, and some are at their fourth. But we're at the third right now, because the speed at which our source does an evolutionary cycle isn't an instance. Sorry, isn't an issue, because every source entity does what they're doing in their own way, and it doesn't matter about whether it is faster than another source entity or in more depth than another source entity, because at the end of the day everything is understood in general by the origin anyway. Just that the whole thing has to be done eventually. And some bits of it, i.e. some of the source entities will do things faster than others, and some of them will do them in different levels of detail than others. And so it's the speed of an evolutionary cycle, although it will get faster and faster and faster, isn't a particular issue really. It's just that it's going to happen. But right now we're within an evolutionary cycle of each other, and that will change as we go through them. I'm being told that at some point there'll be thousands of evolutionary cycle gaps between one source entity to another. Okay. Just checking number 2 question here as part of this third question. Are all source entities outside 12 more or less than the same position of existence? Is there if there's a start, is there an end? And if so, what does it look like? I'm not seeing an end. I'm just seeing that everything is. The start was the generation of sentience that created the origin. Beyond that, there is just expansion. There's just expansion of sentience, growth. I don't see an end. The only it's difficult for us as human beings to conceptualise this, but even when the origin gets to its last piece of structure, within its last jump in from one area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness to another area, I'm being told that that's not the end of things. When it becomes fully understanding of self, it's like that's just just part of the start. so there is no end as such. It's just continuous evolution for forever, basically. And the source entities will never retire. They've always got. They will always continue to do what they're doing, and that they will become, when this particular area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness of the origin is finally mapped out, they become bigger, more complete beings, so to speak, within that next area, and our true energetic selves become equal to source entities, so they'll able to have sort of source entity status, because the next volume, so to speak, is so significantly large in comparison to where we are right now, that there needs to be lots of other source entities, and that's what our true energetic selves will end up being. So there's and I suppose development for a source entity is sort of, it is endless activity basically. There may be periods of, for want of a better word, observation, understanding, cogitation, so to speak. Really sort of understanding what's been achieved. But in real terms, it's going to be, continuous activity. Consolidation may be classified as being a period of inactivity, but even consolidation is activity, because it's understanding what's been achieved, what's been done. So it's continuous work of various different types, continuously. And again, there was a beginning to the origin, but I'm not seeing an end. I'm not seeing an end at all, which is interesting. There's even down to in parts of the Origin Speaks where I said I looked and saw other origins. I'm now understanding that those other origins were basically seeing the event space where the origin created the 12 origin experiment, and then that was outside of this current area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness. So that was what I saw then, but I'm not. But that was an experiment that was basically source entity, so to speak, but with the capability of being an origin, but they weren't. They didn't work. In the Origin Speaks, it describes the reason why each of the different new origins didn't develop into being an origin, because the origin. How can the origin create something which it doesn't even know about itself yet? How can it create itself when it doesn't know itself, doesn't know how big itself is? So really, it didn't work, and that's why the source entities worked, because the source entities were given a reason to be and were created with a level of, for want of a better word, a known awakening path, so to speak. So when they became self-aware, there was already this ability to understand the self and work with the self, and know that there was a creator there, something that created them. And so there wasn't this feeling of being the only one, so to speak, and not being able to work with something that they knew that they felt that they were the only one, but they also didn't feel as if they could be the only one, which is another reason why the 12 origin experiment failed. So I'm not picking up anything like an end. It's just I'm still picking up that this, even when I'm seeing this 12th level of structure, and within each of these 12 levels of structure, there's another 12 levels of structure. It's almost like it's just the start of understanding a certain point of the magnitude of the origin, and I'm not seeing anything beyond that. That may be my limitation, though, and I'll be quite happy if anybody says that they've seen beyond the origin. I'll be very happy to say, okay, over to you, so to speak, because I'm not. That might be my limitation. I'm not seeing anything beyond the total of this vast increase in volume that the origin goes through in structure as we go through each of these different levels. So in the Origin Speaks, it talks of 12 levels. Well, that's just this particular area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness. There's another 11 beyond that, in my understanding, and each of those 11 has an embedded level of 12 types of structure. So it's continuous. It keeps going. Okay. On page 87 of Beyond the Source One, when discussing being drawn back to the physical, source entity explains that those of a lower frequency are indeed fighting back. Who exactly are these beings? Are they unseen spirits intent on preventing the ascension of us and the earth? or do we just ignore them and attempt to focus on spiritual things? Will they ever not be here working for their ends? It's basically, if you think about how we increased the frequency, the base frequency of the Earth, and people were starting to become aware and awake, lots of people becoming spontaneously self-aware and with certain metaphysical functions, so to speak. We were starting to move up the frequency really quickly, but there was lots of, there's a lot of people on Earth, for instance, and other beings in the physical universe who were sensing this and felt uncomfortable with the rising frequencies, and so they subconsciously were trying to bring us back down to a lower level of frequency. This is where the creation of wars comes into it sometimes, or the creation of levels of communion which aren't particularly spiritually functional. And so those entities, and they don't need to have an aim. It's just everybody everywhere in the physical universe. If they are of a certain frequency and they can't cope with the changing frequencies, they desire to have the frequencies that they are comfortable with, that they're in harmony with. And so they try to recreate that environment that is in tune with their own frequencies. And so they create areas of atrocity, so to speak, that brings things down into that particular frequential state. And so, in essence, I suppose that they are always working on trying to bring our frequencies down, because they want to keep the environments at their frequential level. And so it's not just that they're unseen spirits, or they're people who incarnate, or the other incarnate aspects of Trinity self and the rest of the physical universe. It's just that they're all collectively not happy with the rising frequency, so they try to maintain their environments by keeping things at their level, so to speak. So indoctrinating people into doing malevolent acts, so to speak, training people into doing various different things that are considered bad, or really sort of broadcasting and maintaining things that are karmic, for instance, like thoughts and behaviours and actions at a low frequency, is a way of keeping their environment at the frequential level that they are happy with, and that they are in harmony with. And so it's their way of trying to survive, basically, because when the higher frequencies are there, they've either got to adjust to the higher frequencies and become more spiritual, or they will try to maintain their low frequency, their low frequential state. So they will always be working for their own ends, so to speak, but we should not worry about them. We should continue to focus on what we're doing, because focusing on what they're doing means that we're starting to come into their frequential level and dropping our own level. So we need to just recognise that they're there, fine, and then work on ourselves and those also of like-minded thought processes to maintain our level of spiritual growth and frequential growth at the same time. And in that way, we'll continue to increase the frequencies and circumnavigate this desire for people of low frequential thoughts, behaviours and actions to stay in low frequential thoughts, behaviours and actions. So that's one way to do it. So recognise they're there, but don't give them any thoughts, because thoughts means that you start to focus on them, and focusing on them means that you being brought down into their frequential levels. So continue to work on yourself spiritually, continue to have friends of good nature, of good thoughts, behaviours and actions, or spiritual thoughts, behaviours and actions, and just see everything becoming higher frequency, and don't worry about what happens around us. Okay. And the last question is, Source Entity 3, this is on page 107 of Beyond the Source 1, says that some of you even have devices that allow interdimensional transport. Okay. Can I elaborate with more? Can I elaborate with more than just one sentence? From which dimension to which dimension? Which beings? How are the devices built? What materials? How do they function? Do they ever malfunction? Do humans ever do this? Are these devices currently used by beings that come to Earth? Are there portals where visitors transport to? Okay. Basically, there are beings that are incarnate, and mostly disincarnate, who are able to create energies around themselves and move from one frequential state to another. Now, the moving through the frequencies allows, by default, the ability to move from one dimension to another. We have to move through different frequencies to go from one dimension to another. And so this is a function. This is a way of. It's almost like a way of increasing the frequencies of a device, a craft, for instance, that allows the craft to be sort of moved out of one frequency and accepted by another frequency. And then you increase the frequency again. So you move out of that frequency and you go to the next frequency. And so it's like you keep stepping up the steps. So to go from, for instance, the physical universe into the second, which is part of the first dimension, to the second dimension, we need to go through just the 12 frequencies associated with the physical universe and then pop ourselves into the 13th frequency, and that gets us into the second full dimension. But in essence, if we think of it in another way, and we think, okay, we need to continue to increase our frequency on the step-up function, which we can only achieve from frequency to frequency, I'm being told. So it's like 13 steps to go through from one dimension to another dimension. So that's like a mechanical way of doing it. The ways in which they propel themselves is to use various different functions of energy. Now, I'm told that what we call sacred geometry can be used, and it's like you can only use sacred geometry in one particular dimension to work within that dimension. And there's various different sacred geometries that have functions of energies that mean you can move from one to another. So in effect, you would need to use almost like a group of materials and formulated geometry associated with those materials and their functions to go from one dimension to another dimension. It like translates you from one to the other. And then you can use another set of sacred geometry in that dimension to go to another dimension. But you can only move around a tritable of 3 dimensions whilst doing this as a being, as an energetic being. If we were saying that we are energetic beings moving around in our environment, which is the first full dimension, and the second, then we'd need to be basically energetic beings that are visiting the first full dimension, but are using that sort of geometry to go into the first dimension, but also using some form of shielding to maintain our frequencies so that we don't become affected by the low frequencies associated with the physical universe, and therefore lose our connectivity and lose our functionality. So we're going from a higher dimension to a lower dimension, we need to protect ourselves from moving around. So in terms of which beings, it's generally energetic beings who are doing it, although there are incarnate beings who can create mechanical versions that allow them to go from the first full dimension to the second full dimension for transportational purposes. It's generally a function of the geometry and the materials that are used in the geometry and the attractivity of that geometry with the next series of frequencies associated with another dimension. And so they go from those dimensions, but it's a bit like they're limited to a couple of dimensions only, like 3 dimensions. They can only move around in terms of being just energetic beings. And as being incarnate beings, we're limited to go from the first full dimension to the second full dimension, because they're using a function of energy, and how that energy is manifest in a geometric form of some sort. This is associated with the ability to warp the local sort of space, or increase the frequential state, so to speak. And that's what it does. It moves the frequential state from one point to another point, which moves it into it from one dimension to another dimension. As I say, mostly it's energetic beings that do it. Our true energetic self, for instance, or aspects of our true energetic self. Going from the first full dimension to the second full dimension is achieved mechanically, generally, by using one of these functions of sacred geometry associated with the next dimension. The changing of frequency, constructing the geometry creates the frequential state that projects into the next level, and then deconstructing it brings us back, so to speak. And then as an energetic being, we can do the same thing, but move from frequency to frequency, or jump frequencies, for instance. So that's the way to do it. We can go from one particular frequency to another frequency by using the geometry and using our sentience to functionalise and move there. Do humans do it? Well, first of all, do they malfunction? If it's a mechanical device, there's a possibility of it malfunction through maluse or poor use. It's in terms of how they work. It's simply a case of the construction of the geometry and to create the energies. So it's almost like a construction and deconstruction makes it work. Construction of the geometry with the correct materials makes it work. Makes you go from one frequential state to another frequential state, which can be from in one frequency in one dimension to another frequency in another dimension, for instance. Rather than something which is built like a generator. It's the construction it's the creation of the geometry with certain materials that allows it to go from one place to another place, and it's the deconstruction of it that brings it back again. The malfunction is from the use of that geometry is based not really. There's not really any malfunctions rather than one being shown here. It's more a case of inappropriate deconstruction, so to speak, or deconstructing it in the wrong sequence would create a malfunction, or construction in the wrong sequence which cause a malfunction, so that so therefore it wouldn't work properly, or it wouldn't work at all. Some of the beings do come to Earth. They're either energetic beings or higher frequency incarnates. They can use these devices to move vast distances within the physical universe, and it allows them to come to Earth. Humans can't do it themselves because we are a physical form that is specifically designed to work on Earth and other Earth-like environments. There are human type incarnate vehicles that have the capability to go from the first full dimension to the second full dimension, but not Earth-based humans. So the answer is, do humans ever do this? Some of the humanoid type bodies, type incarnate vehicles, have, through their own technologies, the capacity to do so, but not the humans on Earth, or the humanoids on Earth, as it is. It tends to be done by the sort of incarnate aspects or incarnate souls in other human type of bodies, and by that I mean a body, a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Okay, as against humans, as in the Earth-based humans. Okay. So these devices used by other beings come to Earth. Yes. Are there portals where visitors transport to? These portals, the use of this geometry does create portals, so to speak, because it allows the translation of an area or a vehicle using this geometry and the materials of the energy associated with the geometry to go from one place to another place. But the portals open and close; they don't stay open. For instance, it's like what you create a portal, you go through it, the portal closes. But it'll only stay open whilst the geometry is still in construction, or it's still in an assembly. For instance, if it's disassembled, that portal will close, and you'll come back to the originating frequency within that dimension. So I'm not really giving you much detail there, but it's all to do with the construction of the geometry with using the materials, but in a certain process. A bit like when we assemble a car together or a computer together, it has to go in a certain way, and that's the same thing with these geometries. But the function of the geometry is that the portal stays open, so to speak, or the ability to move from one dimension to another dimension, or the frequency within one dimension to the frequency to another dimension remains in operation whilst that geometry is assembled in the right way. When you deconstruct it, that closes the portal. Okay, so hopefully that's gone in some small way to answer some of the questions. There's a couple more questions which I want to hold in abeyance for next Satsanga, which is in September. But right now, we've gone through quite a lot of the time, and I want to do the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes meditation on basically connecting with others. Okay. So, something we need to do, because as the Earth goes through again, still slowly trickling down the frequencies a little bit, we need to connect with others. And if you wanted to, you can share your own higher frequency energy with them. Now you have to think of this in terms of just a temporary share, because you don't want people to take your energy from you. You can just expose them to your own higher frequency energies for a moment. So sit in your straight backed chair, if that's indeed what you're sitting in whilst you're listening to that Satsanga. Feet flat on the ground, palms uppermost, placed on the area where the upper thighs meet the lower part of the body. Close the eyes, focus the closed eye vision on the area in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose, the area of the origin of the spiritual or third eye. And just visualize yourself being full of higher frequency energy. Energy that is full of love, full of care, full of compassion, full of service for others, full of understanding, full of knowingness. Just see yourself like an empty vessel being filled up with a liquid that contains all of those components I've just described. If you wish, you can imagine yourself being filled up from your feet upwards. So this loving, caring, considerate, service-based, knowledgeable energy moving up from your feet up past your ankles, to your calves, to your knees, to your upper legs, thighs, lower body and pelvis, stomach, lungs and heart, up to the shoulders, whilst at the same time going up through the hands, the wrists, the forearms, the elbows, the upper arms, to the shoulders, and then the neck, the jaw, the mouth, the eyes, and the upper head, and then you're full of all this energy. Loving, caring, compassionate, understanding energy. And then I want you to just visualise, or use a mentally spoken word to achieve the same thing, that in front of you is somebody who you may not be able to communicate with properly for whatever reason. And that you really need to connect with them to understand where they're coming from, what their thought processes are, what their behaviours are, why they do the things they do. And so what you can do is allow some of this energy to come out through your heart chakra, which has its origin at the centre of the front of the chest, in the middle of the sternum. And just project this energy from your heart chakra to their heart chakra. Just projecting this loving, caring, understanding, knowing, compassionate energy to them. This energy goes from your heart chakra to their heart chakra. Allow this link to connect with them, and ask for the energies of their thoughts, behaviours and actions to come back to you so that you can understand. Why they think the way they think, why they act the way they act, why they behave the way they behave. So you can understand who they are and where they're coming from. This is the connection with others, so that you find out that that person has a way of working and thinking and behaving and acting because of certain things that have happened to them, what they've been exposed to, what's made them change the way they interact with others or interact with their environment. How has their experience moulded their psychological profile? Once you understand why that person you just connected with works, you can just recognise that they are just the same as you. They are simply the aspect of another true energetic self that's being projected into a human vehicle, a human form, to allow them to experience, learn and evolve in their own way. And maybe they've been caught up a little bit more in the karmic side of things, the low frequency side of things, a bit more than you are. And so are struggling a little bit more. And so if they're struggling with their incarnation or their association with the physical, then we have to be compassionate about them and work with them in a way which is consistent with us understanding what they've experienced and what's led them to start to think, behave and act in the way they do. And so in understanding who and what they are, and understanding why they behave in the way they behave, why they act the way they act, why they think the way they think, we are in knowledge of the bigger picture associated with them, and we can communicate with them knowing that they're just another soul experiencing, learning and evolving, but they may be a bit more caught up in the addictions associated with being incarnate in a lower frequency environment. And so we can be compassionate for them and try to work with them maybe in a way that's best for them, rather than what we would like them to, how we would like them to work with us. And maybe now that we understand them, we've connected with them, we can work in a way which is more compassionate with them. And if we work in a way which is compassionate with them, and in a way that is more knowing, we will find out that they will respond to this new way of us working with them. And not everybody's angry with them, and not everybody's frustrated with them, not everybody hates them, because we simply know that they are the same as us. They are a soul experiencing, learning and evolving, and struggling whilst being in this low frequency environment. And so those people who we have difficulty in communicating with or working with, when we connect with them and understand them a bit more, suddenly become less frustrating to work with, more easier to work with. And that they soften when working with us. They become more easier to deal with, more compliant, so to speak, more capable of understanding higher concepts, more capable of offering their own ideas or accepting the ideas of others, or being less aggressive. Knowing how somebody is, thinks, behaves and acts based upon the way they've been moulded within their incarnation through connectivity means that we can work in a more compassionate state of beingness, and they can work with us in a more compassionate state as well. And so energies of low frequency energies of aggression or frustration or anger can be moved, smoothed out and turned into understanding, caring, compassion and love. So when you've achieved this level of understanding of a person, you have this eureka moment of why they're what they are, why they're who they are, why they think, behave and act in the way they do. you can now move forwards knowing the way to work with them, or projecting them energy and love every time you have to interact with them. So now withdraw that energy, this energy that you've filled yourself with and you've now projected towards that individual who you previously had difficulty in communicating or interacting with. Bring your energy back into yourself, knowing that just in communicating with them, in connecting with them, you've elevated their energies as well. And in understanding them, but through this connection, they will also start to understand you through this connection as well. So retract your energy back into your heart chakra. And slowly put your attention back into your body. Slowly come back into the room. And if you have some water, drink some water to help ground you. And so, this is the end of this particular Satsanga. Thank you very much for listening to this meditation. It's more of a function than a meditation, actually, of how to connect with others and to understand them. And I hope the questions have been useful, and the answers have been useful as well. Sometimes these answers are channeled at the same time as I'm reading them, so it can be a little bit difficult at times, but I do tend to sometimes meander a little bit or wander a little bit. But the next Satsanga is going to be in September, and actually it's going to be on the 30th of September, so quite a distance away. So 30th of September for the next Satsanga. So thank you all very much for listening to this recording. Feel free to spread it, share it with others. There's no problem at all with that. And you can listen to it as many times as you like. There's two different forms of quality with this. And again, I still thank Kevin Moore for broadcasting it as part of his Moore Show YouTube channel. So, Source's love, or God's love to you all, and it's wonderful to be able to help to answer some of your questions and to connect with you in this way. So, God's love to you all, and Namaste.